Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how is it going?
Tony, I'm wonderful because this podcast started in such a punctual manner. Right on time, right on schedule. Boom. Said we're going to do it. We did it. There we go. Right on time. How are you doing?
Tom, I'm doing good. I'm not going to do the passive aggressive thing that you're doing towards the Ohio State Sports Information Department.
What? No. What do you mean?
Because it sure feels like you're trying to say something about the fact that we had the running backs. We're supposed to talk to the running backs at about 10:30 today, and then got them sometime closer to 11:30. Is that what you're saying?
No. I mean, this is the first practice of the spring. I'm sure things will get buttoned up a little more tighter later in the year. I'm not sure why you felt the need to bring that into that. I just was saying we plan to start this podcast now, and we started it now. That's all.
Oh, so you're just showing off.
I'm just, yeah. I mean, we are high achievers. Of all of the things that you could say about this podcast, the nicest is that we are usually quite punctual.
Yep, and that's because we set the time, so that helps. Mm-hmm. But we do. I mean, all the time. The show is named Buckeye Weekly.
That's true. We're early sometimes. That's good.
And we're there twice a week for you, just like weekly means. So, Tom, let's get into the show because we want to get done with the show. Right.
That's always our primary goal at the beginning of every show. This should not be an eternal episode. Like this we definitely end this one.
Yeah. Right. No. Yeah. Not a marathon show. So today, Tuesday, we talked to the Ohio State running backs, Tony Alford. We talked to 5 of the 6 running backs. We were going to get all 6. Steele Chambers had some lunch and then class and couldn't make it. But don't worry, he is still a running back. Tony Alford was asked about that, like, hey, Tony, there's talk around, that maybe Steele Chambers could be moving to linebacker. I don't know. We've never talked about that. And Tony Alford's like, I don't know where that came from. Didn't come from this building. Didn't come from any of these people here at Ohio State. And no, he's a running back, and he's going to be a running back. So I guess we can stop talking about that. If in fact, Tom, we ever did talk about it. I don't know that we ever did. Maybe speculated a little bit here and there, but is that really talking about it?
Depends on if you're doing it in a written form or in a verbal form. And since this is a podcast, I think it probably would count. And, I mean, we'll see how the spring goes. I think that's the overarching theme of the entire show today is like, well, we'll see how the spring goes and see where things stand 15 or I guess 13 now practices from now.
Yeah, before we get into all of the non-answers from about the running back situation and how things are going this spring, we talked to Ryan Day on Monday, and you had Ross Bolton on the Tuesday morning scoop to talk about some of that stuff. I recommend people go listen to that, so we won't get too deep into it regarding some of the same stuff that you and I saw from the rosters, which was lighter linebackers, and then the bullet word being mentioned again. Specifically around Craig Young. And I asked Ryan Day, I'm ready for him to tell me there's no more bullet. And he said, oh no, there is still a bullet. And then, of course, we weren't allowed to ask follow-ups. I couldn't be like, hey, who's in that group? What I should have done, Tom, is, hey, is the bullet around? And if so, who's still in it? And then let him answer. Because last week I asked him 3 questions in one. This week I only asked him 1 question in one.
That's on you. I mean, the word quickies was invented to cram multiple questions into one question. And as long as your multiple questions are quickies, it's okay. So it's fine. So yeah, I have 2 quickies. Is the bullet still a thing? And if so, who's there? Now, Ryan Day has not been particularly enthusiastic about answering depth chart related questions this spring. So you might not have gotten an answer even if you'd asked it, but you at least would have not gotten an answer as opposed to not getting a question.
That is so true. Where you're even like, because when you weigh these questions, they have value because you only get to ask what you get to ask, and you have to like, well, is he even going to answer it? And it's like, well, even if he's not, I still need to try to find out, get something out there. And then Doug Lamarice is trying to get the entire beat to like come together as one. Like, I'll ask about the linebackers, you ask about this, and but of course, it's you can't organize it when you're like one of the last guys asking questions. Like he needs to be, get your hand up first, ask the question, and say, "Hey, let's organize." And then, of course, you can't have unions around this type of thing, Tom. We know that Northwestern and the NCAA have taught us that, but I like all of the trying to get the information. I like actually getting the information more than the trying. And it's been a kind of a chore when Ryan Day was asked, so like, guys like TreVeyon Mitchell and Dallas Gant, who are your guys at linebacker? And Ryan Day was like, yeah, like TreVeyon Mitchell and Dallas Gant, like, whatever.
And I think a certain amount of that is, this is, at this point, that was after the second practice. As of Tuesday, they have had 2 practices, and they have not been in pads yet. They'll be in pads for the first time on Wednesday. So, okay, I think you can show him a little grace there. Yes, it probably, yes. I think multiple things can be true at once. One, he probably has a better idea where things stand now than he is letting you believe right now. 2, things can change quite substantially in the next 13 practices. So where things stand right now may not actually be all that relevant, even in terms of where things stand a month from now. So I think both of those things can be true at the same time. Now, I think all of this does go to the point that, like, it's going to be pretty important that we get to see at least a practice or 2 this spring in terms of our understanding of where things stand right now, because there's a lot of things that, these coaches don't want to say, well, these are the guys at linebacker, because then the guys who are not named in that answer, they also, as much as people want to say that they don't listen to stuff, most of them will listen to stuff and pay attention to stuff. And, we talk all the time about coaches talking to players through the media, using the media to talk to players. That happens. And, that can also happen in a negative way if a coach is talking about a position group and they just, doesn't, they think they've mentioned everyone and they've forgotten 2 people. And then those 2 people go, hey, he didn't mention me. Is it time that I leave? Do I need to transfer? Are they not thinking I have a chance to start this year? So there's a bunch of complicating stuff there. And, I think the clear, answer here is that we get to watch a few practices, and then we'll be able to make those decisions. And then they don't have to care what we think. We'll just be able to, because it's like, who cares what we think? So that seems like that would create a lot more harmony in the Ohio State football program.
It is interesting. It is interesting to hear you defend Ryan Day when you are so adamant that they are only going to play 12 games this year. It's like, on one hand, you're defending him, but on the other, you don't think much of him.
Well, if you go to BuckeyesScoop.com, I just put together pages with the upcoming schedules for all the years for 2021 to 2025, which is as far as the Big Ten has stuff scheduled out. Every single one of them has the Big Ten championship game, college football playoff semifinals, and national championship game on there. So I am simultaneously the one who's being accused of thinking they're only going to play 12 games, and also the jerk who's clearly jinxing them by putting the national championship game and all of these things on each of those schedules. So it's nice that I can tick off everyone just equally from both sides. I'm the hater, and I'm the guy who's like way too optimistic and jinxing everyone. So good.
Tom, all I'll say is Michigan puts the Big Ten championship game on their schedules as well. They don't actually believe it.
I'm going to look up the Rutgers football schedule right now, and we're going to see.
Okay. But while you do that, I will get back to the bullet, because I am glad that is making a return. I do think it needs to be part of this defense. And we've talked about, maybe moving towards more of a 4-2-5. Craig Young, having dropped a little bit of weight, playing some safety, playing some linebacker. I texted you a couple weeks ago saying, hey, this OSU roster that is kind of hidden has Craig Young listed as linebacker and safety. Ryan Day comes back and says this week, yeah, he's playing a little bit of both. And so I think that's the way they need to go. And if he can be an every down guy, then that's – and same thing as Russ said. Like, this needs to be the base defense with the bullet as the Sam. That's what it was for Michigan. They wanted to bring in that sort of thing where it's that the hybrid, the Viper is the base, and then you have a bigger Sam that can come in for running downs, or when you play with Wisconsin or whatever. And that's where football is now. That's where it's been, and that's going to be where it stays. And then eventually you're going to need like 3 bullets as your linebackers almost. And the way they're recruiting, and they're guys are dropping weight. Guys have to be more mobile. you're starting to see. I mentioned a while back, like just recruiting a bunch of Isaiah Simmonses, and you're seeing some of those guys in the 2022 class, and I think you're going to continue to see more and more of that for Ohio State.
Yeah, it's just a reflection of the reality of football right now, which is like you can build your defense to stop Wisconsin or Army or, teams like that are, hey, we have a fullback and we're going to use him and we're going to give him the football. Like you can do that, but that's not who you're going to play most of the time. Like most of the time you're playing teams like the spread is just like, that's kind of the de facto right now. Like pretty much everyone runs some variant of the spread. Like Michigan spreads you out, has the quarterback in shotgun. Like Michigan does this. Like if Michigan does that, like, okay, you have reached the most Luddite corners of college football if Bo Schembechler's Michigan is running spread shotgun offense. So that's just a reflection of how you have to deal with it. Because if you have guys who are the kind of traditional Ohio State middle linebacker mold, that doesn't necessarily work against these offenses these days. So it makes a lot of sense to do that and to do what they're trying to do. And if you're going to most of the time be facing a team like that, that should be your base. You should be keyed on that. And I'm going to be very interested to see this year, does the primary goal of the defense go from stop the run at all costs to something else? Because it seems like it should, because there's a lot of games where they're giving up, they are stopping the run very effectively, but they're giving up a whole bunch of yards and points. So, the general movement in football has been towards passing more, away from we have to establish the run. I mean, there's a whole bunch of statistical reasons for that, but that has like very clearly been the trend in football. And, over the decades, the offense innovates, the defense has to adjust. The offense innovates, the defense has to adjust. This is the defense adjusting to the spread. Once people figure out, once this becomes the kind of the norm across football, and it, if it controls spread the way it probably could, then the offenses have to adjust back. And then you kind of swing all the way back the other direction potentially, where it's like, okay, we're going to get a bunch of 330-pound offensive linemen, and we are just going to and a 240-pound, like a big rondane running back, and we're just going to run over all your little dudes. And it is just it's the old Moneyball, like the market inefficiency. Like as soon as the defense adjusts to what the offenses are doing right now, the market inefficiency is okay. Well, no one wants those big, the enormous offensive linemen who are like Stegosauruses and huge running backs, because they want the quick, shifty guys. Okay, now you can do this, and now you can attack all those defenses in a spot that they're really vulnerable again, and the defense has to adjust back the other direction. Like
Nick Saban said a few years back, like eventually there's only going to be a couple coaches left who know how to stop the wishbone and the triple option, things like that. And maybe as we move towards the running backs here, Tom, maybe that's the answer. How do you play all of these Ohio State running backs?
I mean,
wishbone.
You only need a two deep. Then we have 6 running backs. This is too many. Like if you're running a wishbone, that's just a 2 deep. You might not have enough running backs.
Exactly. You got an RB, you got a full B, you got an AB, you got an HB, you got a WB. I mean, you got everything you need. I'll just mention, in case anybody's wondering, there's no news on the quarterbacks, and there won't be any news on the quarterbacks for a while. So, fortunately, we have not talked to Corey Dennis and the quarterbacks just yet, because they would tell us, as we mentioned before the show, it's still early. And so they don't really, so don't worry too much about the quarterbacks just yet. Everybody's looking fine. Tony Alford said they all have tremendous skill. So you feel better, because I know you guys all thought that they were out there throwing 2 hands. No, these are one-handed throwers, which, pretty good. I mean, didn't have that in 2011.
That's how you get that 5th star, is master the one-handed throw. Yes. Yeah, it is. This is one of the, frustrations with spring ball that I think a lot of people have, which is, at the beginning of spring ball, everyone's just itching for news. And it's like, well, the answer to everything pretty much could be it's too early, which is fair. Like, you've only seen 2 practices. You haven't seen anything in pads. So like Ryan Day talked about the fact that you don't want to put too much emphasis on what you're seeing right now, and get like locked into where everything's just confirmation bias. Like, well, in the first couple practices, this guy looked much better than everyone else. And then you're just, everything is confirmation bias after that. They're trying to be, kind of withhold judgment, all this kind of stuff. And that's probably gonna be true through most of spring. So it will probably be too early to tell on a lot of stuff for several weeks now. And then, maybe by the time the spring game rolls around, we'll have a better sense for where some of this stuff stands.
Well, and I was surprised by Kevin Wilson when he was asked last week, hey, don't you need a second tight end in the spring? And he's like, oh, that's probably going to go into the fall anyway. And, even if we're not going to play as much two tight ends as we did last year because, you don't have the same tight ends. And it did seem like this spring is really developmental, fundamental, as Ryan Day has said. Urban Meyer would want to know who his starters were coming out of spring. I don't think they're really as concerned about that right now. They missed last spring. And so they're trying to build the fundamentals back up and get everybody doing the right thing. And then you've got time during camp to make those decisions. And like you said, they all have a pretty good idea of where everyone stands and what it will take to win a job and who's there. And running back right now, Tony Alford said if they had a game tomorrow, it would be Master Teague because he's the returning starter. He is the incumbent. He's the guy with all the experience. But he did say he needs to get better in space and make guys miss. And it was interesting. He said that with some of the stuff the stud is doing with the offensive line, there's going to be opportunities for guys to get to the second and third level, and they have to make guys miss. So it'll be interesting to see what that means. But the fact that he acknowledges what everybody else has acknowledged about Master Teague is that there are some, you got to make guys miss more often than you have. Teague was asked how much better or how much better do you feel than you did last year? And he's like, I feel the same. So then you're like, oh, no, it would have been better if you said you feel even better and more nimble, but you didn't.
This is the time of year when everyone's supposed to be in the best shape of their lives. Did you not get the memo? Even if you're not, you have to say that I'm in the best shape of my life. It's a whole meme. Yeah, he's, I think at this point, I'm not expecting like a massive change in who he is. Like he's just, he has certain stuff he's very good at. And, you're not necessarily going to look at someone like Evan Pryor, for example, and say, we should run this guy between the tackles 30 times. Like, no, that's probably not going to be the best way to use him. And, Teague is probably, that may be more what Teague is. And then, you have other guys on that roster who have other areas of strength. And that's not a terrible thing. Tony Alford was asked about, juggling a couple guys. And the question was framed like, hey, that hasn't always worked, trying to have multiple backs. And he kind of blanched at that. He didn't really care for that characterization. He said, what they're trying to do is they're trying to win games. And they have done a pretty good job winning games. I mean, over the last few years, that is something they have done pretty consistently. So, I think that they would probably love to have a J.K. Dobbins or a late season Trey Sermon kind of running back. And they may have that on the roster. I don't know that they necessarily know for sure who that's going to be. I have a theory on who it might be, but that person is pretty darn young. So that person might not be ready yet, but they have some time. They have a whole bunch of spring to sort things out and then see where the roster stands and, going into the summer. And, I'm sure they'll start paring down because you can't give 6 guys equal numbers of reps because otherwise then no one's getting reps. Like at some point that number has to change. That field has to sort of winnow down a little bit one way or another. But yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. Whenever we get to watch, I'm going to be interesting to see how they're distributing the carries and who's running in what order and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and even Alfred explains to us that, he's told the guys sometimes you won't get as many reps in practice because I'm looking for other things in terms of, like I need to see Evan Pryor run through contact more. So he's going to get more carries. And so that might be one of those days where like, holy crap, Evan Pryor's with the 2s. And it's like, well, no, for these particular drills, that's what they wanted to see. And they didn't, Evan Pryor has passed Master Teague. It's like, well, no, they don't really need to see Master Teague run through arm tackles anymore. That's I think they need the younger guys to do.
I think there's an important distinction that we need to make clear here.
Yes.
Watching practice will allow us to draw some conclusions. It will not necessarily allow us to draw correct conclusions, but it will allow us to draw conclusions. That's, I think, what spring football is all about.
Well, that's one of the major differences between you and me. because I don't recall ever being wrong about something I've seen in practice and then making a statement about it.
You posted a video on Twitter this week of J.K. Dobbins during his first spring, and I'm sure when you looked at that video of J.K. Dobbins tripping over a like a beanbag thing that like a tackling dummy pad, I'm sure you were looking at that and going, first 2,000-yard rusher in Ohio State history. I remember you saying that on the podcast right after that. It was. I was like, that's pretty bold. I don't know. And you're like, oh yeah, absolutely. The way he tripped over that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely where this is headed. It's like, all right.
I saw the frustration with his failure, and I saw Tony Alford's absolute disgust in that video as he just walked away. They say something like, you're having a tough day, young fella. But yeah, I was right on that one. Do I see a 2,000-yard rusher here? No, I think there's too much talent this time, Tom.
This year, or there's not a person on this roster who's going to rush for 2,000 yards in a season in his career.
I will say that. I will I will guarantee that I will say that there is no 2,000-yard rusher on this roster. However, I will say there's about 5 2,000-yard career rushers on this roster right now, because they do have a lot of guys, and however many opportunities they get, I expect them to make quite a bit out of it. I thought Marcus Crowley talking about the difficulty in rehab last year is very interesting, because if you remember, he tore his ACL in November of 2019. And then, of course, the pandemic. So guys are sent home. However, remember, Master Teague got to stay in Columbus and rehab from his Achilles. So it's just, different guys can do different things. Marcus Crowley was sent. He had to go home to do his rehab. And it's like, so it's totally not the same. And of course, it wouldn't be the same as being able to rehab in Columbus compared to having to rehab on your own. Marcus Crowley, MD, basically trying to Google. No, I'm sure he's not Googling for stuff. Ohio State is telling him, hey, try this. And maybe have you tried what we want you to do is get the couch, put it in the middle of the living room, and just push it around with your injured knee, and just try to move it from one side of the living room to the other. And that's how the old timers did it. They move. That's called the couch workout, Tom.
I like the fact that you've basically lowered the Ohio State training staff to like Clippy, the Microsoft paperclip assistant thing. Have you considered a medicine ball? You're trying to get me in trouble with the SIDs. You can get you can get yourself in trouble with the trainers there. That's fine. No,
first put on a unitard.
One thing that I think is worth mentioning in the context there is Master Teague blew out his Achilles like about a week before everything shut down. Right. Crowley had been going for, that he had been rehabbing already at that point for months and months. Teague had to have the surgery and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's much earlier in the process. So that probably changes who is where in those circumstances as well.
But it was difficult for him to get back, and then he felt like he was ready to play, and it was bothering Tony Alford to play and wanted to play, and then finally gets in the Alabama game, and then Tony Alford told us that he gets hit in that Alabama game, and he comes over to the sideline and apologized to Tony Alford because Alford had been telling him, you aren't ready, and Crowley thought for weeks that he was, and then he saw that he wasn't, and he apologized to Tony Alford and said, you're right, I wasn't ready. But it sure seems like he's ready this spring, and give him credit for sticking it out and continuing to fight. And it would be really, really easy to deal with all of that mess last year. The frustration, he said he was frustrated last year, and you can understand why. And then now you come back to a room with 6 running backs, and you are at best 3rd or 4th in the pecking order right now, which not only are you striving to be 1st or 2nd, but you're trying to keep the 5th and 6th guys from passing you and 4th guys from passing you. So other guys would leave, and so credit to him for sticking it out to this point and wanting to play, and says he's back to where he needs to be. And although he did say we'll know more on Wednesday once the pads go on and things are for real again. So just credit to him for sticking around. Tony Alford said he's looking forward to seeing what he can do. And I just go back to that freshman year, 2019, man. He was You don't average 9 yards per carry with the second team offensive line just because the defense you're facing is tired. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, there is absolutely something there. And I mean, you got to remember, Crowley was the Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Florida, like the best high school football player in the state of Florida, which is known as one of, if not the best states for high school football talent. And he was playing against some pretty good competition there and putting up big numbers. And he was someone that he was just kind of under the radar the whole time. He was someone they brought in relatively late in that cycle. I remember he was doing a photo shoot on the field after one of the games, and we were walking through. I was like, "Oh, hey, there's Marcus Crowley," and then he committed. I think not too long after that. But yeah, he's someone who, if he's healthy, he's someone who could be in that mix to be a starter. Like everyone on that team, like you do not get recruited to play Ohio State running back without having the talent to be a really, really good college running back. If Marcus Crowley is healthy, he could be that. If Steele Chambers can hang on to the football, he could be that. Miyan Williams, like I think we have seen flashes from Miyan Williams, TreVeyon Henderson, Evan Pryor. Like you look at their high school stuff, it's like, okay, that guy looks like he's probably pretty good with the ball in his hands and pretty quick. And all of these guys, and Master Teague was one of the Big Ten's leading rusher as a backup 2 years ago. Like, I mean, there's all of these guys. Like there are no slouches in this group. So. Yeah, this is going to be a real fun spring to watch because I could see just about any of them being at least a top 3 back. Like there's a way that any of those 6 guys are a top 3 back and run for at least 250, 300 yards this fall at least.
One of my favorite things from today's session was Miyan Williams talking about how somebody asked him, part of your skill set is that it's hard for the defense to see you. And he's like, yeah, I'm not really used to this because in high school, he was the same size as his offensive line was the same size as he was. Now, mind you, Miyan Williams is listed at 5'8", 227. And so it's like, I'm just imagining like Tech Mobile. All the players are the same size.
And when you say listed at, what are you implying there, Tony?
I'm just saying that's exactly his weight. It's in height.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because the SID department, the Sports Information Department.
I don't think Jerry and Mike are the ones out there with the ruler. Is my.
I just know they do take pride in those numbers being accurate, just like they take pride in everything.
How tall that was uncalled for, Tony, and I think you owe Mike and Jerry an apology.
Yeah.
My one follow-up question: how tall was Tate Martell listed at?
5'11".
Is the accuracy policy a new thing or no?
It doesn't apply to quarterbacks.
The point is, the point Tony is making is there are some very short offensive linemen in Cincinnati high school football.
Right.
But Miyan Williams is, is listed at 5'8". Most of Ohio State's offensive line is listed a good
6'8".
Yeah, I was going to say 6 to 12 inches taller than him. I mean, Miyan Williams is built like a brick, what house, and you put him next to DeJuan Jones, and he looks like he's DeJuan Jones's kid. So, he could be one of those guys who that worked real well for J.K. Dobbins, where J.K. Dobbins was not you stood next to J.K. Dobbins. Was he 5'10", 5'11"? I mean, maybe.
I think he measured 5'9.5" at the combine, actually.
Yeah, I mean, so I apologize. It was a half inch off there 2 years after last standing next to J.K. Dobbins. My bad.
Eyes checked.
He is, that is something that has worked out reasonably well for Ohio State running backs in the past, and that definitely is not something that I would expect to hold him back by any means.
Yeah, what you cannot do at Ohio State is recruit 6'3" running backs because those guys are trash and slow.
Not one of them has won the Heisman Trophy in nearly 26 years now. So
yeah. Wouldn't do it. Couldn't be me. So there's that. I was really impressed with the freshmen today. We did get to talk to Evan Pryor and TreVeyon Henderson. They are seemingly best friends, roommates, very competitive. They even, Tom, they even compete when it comes to cooking. I wanted to ask, it's so dumb because if we're all standing around the table, we'll really dig into the cooking thing because it's fun and it's funny. On the Zoom thing, it's like you have one question if you get it, and you can't just joke around, and you can't really, get into that stuff. But Tony Alford said he would judge it. I think that would be a fantastic, like a little reality show. Top Chef Ohio State freshman running back room, or you know what? Open it to everybody. Why just the running backs?
There you go. Yeah, just start doing instead of football this year. Just pump out reality TV content. That's smart.
Buckeyes on Bravo.
The business model.
Yes.
Why are they doing Iron Chef Columbus on Big Ten Network? What is going on? Well, I have good news and I have bad news. Good news is the tailgating is going to be fantastic this fall.
You think we're allowed to tailgate this fall, Tom? Oh, boy, the show's just crashed.
I'm gonna be real optimistic and say yes. I'm gonna be extremely optimistic.
Talk about these talented freshmen, Tom. They seem pretty good. They
do seem pretty good, and they were, they seemed excited to be talking to us, which is not always true of everyone, but they seemed like they were kind of excited to be a part of this and get this is the first time for everything, and when you're a senior and you've done 74 of these, then the novelty is worn off a little bit, but the first time is kind of exciting, and you've got new, fun, exciting stuff to talk about, and everything is new and exciting and ahead of you. Like no one has fumbled in a game yet. No one has failed to pick up the blitz correctly in a game yet. Like there's nothing bad to ask. So there's that's a very fun conversation, and I do think that the idea that they're roommates and that they're friends and that they're working together. I mean, Tony Alford said at one point they FaceTimed him or something, and they were in the facility on like a Sunday night in January and like working on blitz pickup. And they had one of the wide receivers there, like holding the phone so Tony Alford could watch them do, some kind of a blitz pickup drill or something like that. That's good. That's what you want. You want guys who are working together. You want guys who are friends. That the wide receiver unit has done a great job establishing that culture where they're really happy for each other. Like I get, when you have pictures of Garrett Wilson scoring a touchdown, there are a million, all the other wide receivers are there, just screaming and excited for him. And it's not like, well, why didn't I get to score a touchdown? Like, why does he get to score all the touchdowns? It's just, they're there to support each other. That's a culture that's been built up over the years. That was a Terry McLaurin, Johnny Dixon, Paris Campbell thing. And that happened before them. And it's kind of gotten passed down. And it's the same thing in the running back room. And you need that. That's what keeps everyone who's not the starter from transferring. Like that's, hey, I'm still part of the team. I'm happy for, my friend who is the starter. He's happy for me when I get to play. Like, and that's, you need that. That's the culture that they have tried to establish in all of those position rooms. And, that is one of the reasons. I talked to Danny Vanatsky, who is a walk-on, who just hung up his cleats last week. And I talked to him about, why how do you keep three quarterbacks together? How do you keep that from turning into like an animosity kind of thing where, yes, these are guys who are all competing against me and only one of us can be the starter. That is how being a quarterback works. And he said, it's all about who you recruit, like the kind of people you recruit and the culture in that room. If you can keep that culture, that doesn't mean no one's going to transfer ever, but you keep a lot more, you don't have the just absolute like outward flow of 20 guys in a year, like some programs have. So that kind of keeps it all together. And, I think the TreVeyon Henderson and Evan Pryor thing is just, another example of like, hey, that's something that probably will still hold true moving forward.
And Tony Alford said you build the brotherhood before the competition. And that's why when you enroll early, you start with winter workouts, and that's the brotherhood is built there. If you enroll in the summer, you start with summer workouts, and you don't just go straight to practice and straight to a competition. You're in the grind with everybody and with your room, and you're learning with your room, and that's where that comes from. Neither of those freshmen have played since their junior seasons because they were both in North Carolina and Virginia. High school football is pushed to the spring. TreVeyon Henderson said, they get the pads on tomorrow. He just needs to get hit once, and then everything will come back to him. Evan Pryor was like, no, I don't want to get hit. I'm just I want to score every play. Like, I'm not trying to get hit. I don't need to get hit. I'm a home run hitter. And he said that's, one of the things he can bring to the offense is he can score from anywhere. And so it's just, even though they are both seen as home run hitters in this offense and very high potential, I thought it was an interesting, nice little juxtaposition combination of the two. Like, yeah, I want to get hit. I'm looking for it. The other's like, getting hit is stupid.
I got to tell you, I'm with Evan Pryor on this one. Like you look at the the workout photos from Ohio State, and it's like, I don't think I would want to get run into by that guy going 20 miles an hour, head on. Like, that doesn't seem like that would be all that fun at all. Maybe that's why I didn't make it as a college running back. That was the only thing.
Should have tried linebacker.
Clearly.
Anything else from today, Tom, that you want to get out there before we go?
I don't think so. I think we kind of hit all the big things. It is going to be real interesting to see how this whole thing shakes out. Because I mean, juggling six players and trying to keep everyone, Tony Alford has told us in the past, like, it's not his job to keep them happy; it's their job to keep him happy. But you got to keep everyone, you got to keep everyone at least involved and in the process, and sort of figure out where guys stack up. It's going to be so interesting to see how that, because I can't remember a spring where they had six guys who all could be, somewhere on that 2 deep, 6 months from now. But that means that half of them aren't going to be there. So this is going to be a really, really interesting year to see who, and by not going to be there, I mean, not on the 2 deep, not at the school. Sorry. I said that and I was like, people are going to think I mean something completely different than I mean there. No, but it is 6 guys who are all talented enough to be significant contributors this year. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that shakes out. Because there's always so many things that go into that decision that are not necessarily things that the average person thinks. It's like, oh, well, this guy had a long touchdown in the spring game. He must be. It's like, well, how's his blitz pickup? How's his, there's all that kind of stuff. Is he fumbling the ball in practice? Like you don't necessarily know all of that stuff. So, and there's a lot of variables there. And, I think both of those true freshmen are really, really talented, but without, how much will not having played last fall, will that leave them behind, or will that mean they're fresh? There's so many different things to watch and talk about this spring that, I will say this about every position group, but like, I'm really interested to see what shakes out with the freshmen, with the running backs this year.
Well, and as Tony Alford said, when the talent is equated, it's all of the little things that will decide who plays. And so it is blitz pickup. It is consistency. It is not putting the ball on the ground. It's just being the reliable guy that they need you to be. And, 6 guys, I think this is probably the most talented running back room. Maybe is it like 1992 when, I'm just bringing up the roster right now, they had like Eddie George, I think maybe Robert Smith, Butler Benote, Dante Lee, Raymond Harris, Jeff Cothran.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm just.
Yeah. And that's let's see how many of those guys played in the NFL. Benote, Harris, Cothran, George. Dante Lee didn't, right? I mean, that's at least 4 NFL running backs.
Right. And then
Robert Smith, 5.
Robert Smith,
5 NFL running backs. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And I think it's like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some potential there for sure. And it was easier to do back then because you ran the ball 80 times. And so, one guy could get 30, another guy could get 25, a third guy could get 22.
There's only one football, but we have a lot of them. We're gonna keep having one football, and they're all gonna go to the running backs.
Exactly.
Like, how do we keep 6 running backs happy? Like, well, that's easy. How do you keep 2 wide receivers happy? That's the real trick to the early '90s Ohio State offense.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it compares favorably to that room, and we'll see. Certainly not this spring. It's too early to tell, but later on. All right, I think that'll do it then. Tom, who you got on the morning scoop on Thursday? I don't know what day it is.
Well, Thursday's 2 days from now, so I'm not sure. But
Wednesday.
That's a great question, and we'll have to figure that out shortly. I know. On Friday, I'm going to have Mick Walker on to talk about his recent tour of camps and watching players and seeing some games down south. And Mick has been very, very busy. He's coming on Friday. Next 2 days, we'll figure it out.
All right, cool.
I'm sure it'll be interesting and informative, and I bet one of them will be you. I have a good feeling. I have a good feeling.
It's been a while. The last time was in Indianapolis.
That's true. Were you there for some kind of football something? I don't remember. A long time ago. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
The combine? I don't know. Anyway. All right. Hey, continue to check out the Buckeyescoop.com. I think it's a great resource for all Buckeye fans. Those who want a lot of information and those who just want some information. You can get it all right there. If you're not yet a member, I would recommend it. There's always something going on. And right now, spring, there's a practice report after one day last week. This weekend, a bunch of information came in from that, from some of Nevada Buck sources. And so that will continue to happen as the Buckeyes practice. And, then, of course, we get to talk to players, get to talk to coaches, and all kinds of information happens there. So if you're not yet a member, I would recommend it. If you are a member, again, thank you for joining and thank you for supporting us. So everybody have a great day, and we will talk to you later in the week.